This video collects all FileZilla tutorials to learn how to use FileZilla. In this tutorial, you will learn how to transfer files using FTP with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. On the left side, you see your local files. You can navigate to any directory in your local file system. On the right side, you see the files and directories on the remote server. Now you are ready to upload files to the remote side. To transfer file, you can simply double-click the file name in the file list. You can also right-click in the file name and select Upload to transfer files to the current remote directory. If you need to transfer several files, just select them. Right-click and choose Upload. You can also use the transfer queue to transfer several files and directories. First, add directories and files to the transfer queue. Then, just start the queue processing to have your files uploaded. To transfer files from the remote side, you proceed the same way. First, create a new local directory to store your files. To download one file only, just double-click it. Select and right-click to download several files. The transfer queue also works for file and directory download. Then just start the queue processing to have your files uploaded. In this video, you learned how to upload and download files using FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, you will learn 3 things you might not know about FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. The first thing is, you can drag and drop files to transfer them to and from remote servers. On Windows, you can drag and drop to and from Windows Explorer. First, connect to your remote site. Select one or more files on the remote site and drag them to a local directory. The selected files are automatically transferred to your local directory. To transfer to the remote site, select the files in your local directory and drag them to the remote site file view. Also, in this case, the selected files are automatically transferred to the remote site. Drag and drop work the same way for any supported protocol. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Second, if you are experiencing problems to connect to your FTP server, you may want to try our online FTP tester and make sure it works. Just fill in the FTP connection details and press Test My Server. You will see a log of your test. Either the connection works or not. If it fails, it will tell you what are the possible reasons. Third, you might not know that you can keep multiple connections open for different accounts. When connecting to another site, you can choose to open it in a new tab. A new tab is created for the new connection, but the existing connection is still open in the previous tab. In this video, you got answered 3 basic questions you always wanted to ask about FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use FileZilla and FileZilla Pro Site Manager. The Site Manager is where you configure and organize the server connections. You can open it from the menu or pressing Ctrl+S or Command+S on Mac OS. To create a new server connection, choose New Site. Name it as you wish. In the right side, you can configure your connection. Connection details depends on the protocol type. Some options may not be available for all protocols. You can configure both the background and the tab color. In the Advanced tab, you can configure the server type, proxy bypass, the local and remote directories that will be opened when the connection is established, synchronized browsing, and directory comparison. To learn more about directory comparison and synchronized browsing, watch the videos in the description. And last, the time offset from the server time. In the transfer settings, you can configure the transfer mode. The transfer mode configuration is available only for FTP. To know more about transfer mode, watch the transfer types video. You can also configure the number of concurrent connections. And last, the Care Set tab. You specify the character set used to communicate with the server. Your server connection is configured, and now you can connect to it. In the Site Manager, you can create folders to organize your servers. New sites are created under the selected folder. You can drag existing server connections to the folder. The folders are shown as submenus in the drop-down toolbar menu. Rename the server connection, delete it, or create a copy of it. You can create a bookmark for a connection. To learn how to use bookmarks, watch the Bookmarks video. Last but not least, you can configure FileZilla and FileZilla Pro to open the Site Manager at Startup in the interface settings. Choose the option to open the Site Manager at Startup. In the next run, the Site Manager opens at Startup. In this video, you learned how to use with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro Site Manager. In this tutorial, you will learn how to securely use FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. In FileZilla and FileZilla Pro, almost all protocols require a password. By default, FileZilla stores passwords together with other site information like the user or host name. If password storing is disabled, FileZilla will ask you to enter the password every time you connect. This is recommended when using FileZilla from a public computer or someone else's computer you cannot guarantee won't be compromised in the future. For an additional level of protection, users can enable a master password. That is a password to encrypt all passwords with. Be aware that if you lose the master password, it will not be possible to restore any stored password. When connecting, FileZilla asks for the master password. FileZilla does not require you to rewrite the master password at every connection. You can disable the master password by choosing the other options. When disabling the master password, you have the option to restore the passwords by entering the master password, or in case you lost the master password, you can delete all passwords. In this case, you have to re-enter all the passwords again via Site Manager. Again, if you're using FileZilla from a public computer, it is important to remove all stored sensitive information. This includes any data entered in the Quick Connect box, connection data from the last used server, any site you created in the Site Manager, and finally, any transfer queue information. In this video, you learned how to manage FileZilla and FileZilla Pro securely. In this tutorial, you will learn how to search files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Open the search dialog to search your files, either locally or remotely. FileZilla searches under the current selected directory and its subdirectories. Choose how to apply the search conditions. Search conditions allow you to locate files that meet specified criteria for file name, size, path, and last modification date. FileZilla allows you to combine several search conditions. Use the conditions to narrow your search. FileZilla searches files and directories. Here we are only interested on searching for files. Click Search to start the search. FileZilla will run the search and show the results. Once you find the desired file, you can download it or do what you need to. FileZilla can recreate the directory structure if you want, or simply transfer the files to the target directory. There is an option to start the download immediately or to add the files to the queue to have them transferred later. You can also search within the current directory by typing the file name. As you type, FileZilla selects the first file starting with the typed letters. Type the letter B, now type the letter R. FileZilla first selects the file starting with B, and then the first file starting with BR. This type of search is applied within the current listed files. If you just want to find files with a given name, open the Quick Search box, pressing Ctrl F. If you are on Mac, press Command F instead. Enter the text you want to search. FileZilla will show only the files containing the search text. Use Quick Search options to modify the way FileZilla does the search. For example, you can invert the search. The result will hide all the files containing the search text. In this video, you learned how to search with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to a SFTP server with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, you will learn how to connect to a SFTP server using a file key with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In order to connect, you will need the IP address or DNS name of your server and the private key file. If you have only the password, configure your connection logon type as normal and use the password. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select SFTP, SSH File Transfer Protocol as the protocol. Enter the IP address or host name of your server. Select Key File as the logon type. Now enter the username. And in the key file box, enter the path for your key file. If everything is correct, now you can connect. The unknown host key dialog is shown. You have to confirm this is correct. You can also choose to trust this server in future connections. Click OK to accept the host. FileZilla connects to the server with the configured key. In the right side, you see your directories and files. You can also use PuTTY's key agent to handle your key file. If your key file is not yet in the PPK format, you need to convert it first. You can use PuTTY Key Generator tool. Download and install PuTTY. You will find the link in this video description. In the Key Generator tool, load your key. Enter and confirm a passphrase to protect your key. You will need this passphrase later. Finally, save your private key in PPK format. Launch Pagent. The SSH key agent in the system tray, locate the Pagent icon. Right-click and choose Add Key. Select your private key file and enter the password you created earlier. The agent is now able to use your private key. Now back to FileZilla. Configure your connection. Change the logon type to normal. If the agent is used, you can leave the password field empty. If everything is correct, now you can connect. In this video, you learned how to connect to a SFTP server using a key file with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to configure FTP file transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure FTP transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. FTP transfer can be of two types, ASCII or binary. ASCII type is used to transfer text files. The format of text files vary on different platforms, and a conversion between the client and the server may be necessary. With the ASCII type, the text file is correctly converted. With the binary type, the files are transferred without conversion. This type is suitable to transfer images or data files. The auto option enables automatic detection of the most appropriate transfer type for a file. That is, it will use the ASCII type for text files and binary type for every other type of file. You can also configure which file types have to be managed as text files. To add a new file extension, enter the file extension without the dot, then click Add. Now files with that extension will be managed as text files, and as such transferred using the ASCII transfer type. By selecting this option, files without extension will be managed as text files and transferred as ASCII transfer type. Also with this option, files starting with a dot will be managed as text files. The transfer type can also be modified while your connection is active. In the Transfer Type menu, you can choose Automatic, ASCII, or Binary transfer types. These options are also available from the Transfer Type icon in the status bar. For a more detailed description of FTP transfer type, visit the link you find in the description of this video. In this video, you learned how to configure transfer types with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use the transfer queue with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. The transfer queue is used by FileZilla when either uploading or downloading a file. When you select a file for upload or download, FileZilla adds the file to the queue and starts to process it immediately. You can also add files or directories to the queue. Selecting a directory, all its files get added to the queue. You can process the queue later. If you start with an empty queue, files are transferred in the order they are added to the queue. You can change the order files are processed. You can also change the order by changing the priority. Higher priority files are processed first. The order depends on the configuration for simultaneous transfers and if there are transfers for different servers in the queue. You can also set what to do when FileZilla finds an existing file. The default action is configured in the settings. Or you can configure the action in the queue either for a file or for all files in the queue. You can also select which action to do after FileZilla processed the queue. FileZilla saves the queue between sessions. If you close FileZilla and opens it again, the queue entries are still there. You don't even need to reconnect. FileZilla will automatically connect to process the queue. To clean the queue, select Stop and Remove All in the Queue view. In this video, you learned how to use Transfer Queue with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to compare directories with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Open your local directory. Then open the remote directory. Now you can enable the directory comparison. By default, FileZilla and FileZilla Pro shows differences based on the last modified column. In green, you see the last modified files, that is, the most recent files. In yellow, you see files that exist only on one side. You can also change the type of comparison to be based on the file size. In this type of comparison, the files with different sizes are shown in red. With synchronized browsing, you can easily compare subdirectories on both sides. When you visit a directory on one side, FileZilla automatically visits the directory with the same name in the other side. In this video, you learned how to compare directories using FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use directory filters with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Select the connection you want to use. Wait until the connection is completed. Directory filters help you focus on the files that are important to you. FileZilla comes with a set of easy-to-use predefined filters. We'll show you how to define a new one. First, click the Edit Filter Rules button. Click New to create a new empty filter. Give a name to the filter. Filter settings tell how the filter will be applied to the directory and file list. Here you define which column is affected by the condition: file name, size, attribute, path, or date. You can set different conditions depending on the column you choose. We will apply the condition to the file name. We want to hide file names that begin with a given string. The string of text is the tilde, typically the first character of the Microsoft Office temporary files. Since we are interested in applying the filter to files only, we unselect directories. The new filter is now available both for local and remote lists. To use the filter, just check it and click Apply. Notice that temporary files have disappeared, but they are not gone. They are still there. Now look at the list status bar. You can see the number of files and directories, the total size, and the number of entries that were filtered out. Clear the filter selection and all files will be listed again. Let's now filter the remote side. You can also save the filter selection as a new filter set to use it later. In this video, you learned how to use directory filters with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to use tabbed browsing with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use tabs with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. With tab browsing, you can have multiple connections at the same time. To add a tab, choose File, New Tab, or press Ctrl-T. A new empty tab is created. Your existing connection is still active in the old tab. In the new tab, you can open a new connection. Each tab is independent and can show different local files. You can configure FileZilla or FileZilla Pro to restore the tabs and reconnect on startup. With this option enabled, FileZilla or FileZilla Pro will reopen the tabs and establish all connections. You can also configure FileZilla or FileZilla Pro to create always a new tab when opening a new connection. In this video, you learned how to use tabbed browsing with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to edit remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to edit your remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use S3, the instructions work also with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. From FileZilla or FileZilla Pro, you can edit your remote files. To edit the file, right-click it and choose View Edit. FileZilla copies the file to a temporary local file. The default editor for that type of file is launched. For example, in this case, Notepad opens the temporary local file. FileZilla detects if the local copy has changed and asks you if you want to copy the edited copy back on the server. If you don't want to continue editing, select this option. The temporary local file will be deleted. Choose Yes to replace the file on the server. There is no way to detect if the local file is still open by the editor. With this option, you see the files FileZilla tracks as currently being edited and can choose to stop tracking the file or replace the file on the server with the edited local file and keep tracking the file, or to stop tracking the local edited file and upload it on the server as it is, or to reopen the file. To change the file editing behavior, see the file editing options. By default, FileZilla uses the editor associated with the file's file type. You can use the operating system associations and also customize associations. To customize an association, enter the file extension followed by the full path of the program to be used to open the file. Now the file will be opened by the configured program. If there are no editors associated with a given file type, the default editor for that type of file is used. You can always configure a custom editor. In this video, you learned how to edit your remote files with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to use FileZilla Bookmarks with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Bookmarks are used to remember local and remote paths over sessions. In this tutorial, you will learn how to use bookmarks with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use FTP, the instructions also work with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. To create a new bookmark, choose Add Bookmark Entry from Bookmarks menu. Global bookmarks can be applied to any connection. Global bookmarks are recommended to connect to remote servers with the same directory structure, or just to access specific local directories. Site-specific bookmarks can be applied only to the connection they were created for. Choose the local directory that will be bookmarked. Then enter the corresponding remote directory. You don't need to fill both directories. FileZilla will change to the directory configured and left the other one unchanged. You can enable synchronized browsing and directory comparison. For details on those, visit Directory Comparison Video. You find the link in the video description. Now you can choose the bookmark and FileZilla will automatically change both the local and remote directories. The site-specific bookmarks are also available from the Site Manager. You can also connect from the bookmark and FileZilla will connect to the site and change to the directories. From the Bookmarks Manager, you can modify existing bookmarks, create new ones, rename them, delete them, or create copies of existing bookmarks. In this video, we'll teach you how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. The layout setting allows you to change to position of the both local and remote folders and files lists. The classic layout is the default FileZilla layout. Directories at the top, files at the bottom, local directories and files on the left side, and remote directories and files on the right side. With the Explorer layout, the directory trees are positioned to the left of the file lists, just like in Windows Explorer. The widescreen layout puts directories and files, both local and remote, in the same row. The Blackboard layout is similar to the widescreen layout, but the local directory tree stays on the left side and the remote directory tree stays on the right side. Both file lists stay in the middle. The message log position option changes the position of the message log. The default option is to show it above files and directories lists. It can be moved next to the transfer queue. Or it can be a tab in the queue panel. By selecting the Minimize to Tray option, when minimized, FileZilla is located in the system tray. Use the Startup configuration to define how FileZilla starts, either normally or showing the Site Manager or restoring the tabs and reconnecting. The next option defines what happens when starting a connection while already connected to that. With the default option, Ask for Action, FileZilla asks if the new connection has to be opened in a new tab or if the current connection needs to be closed and the new connection has to be opened in the same tab. With the Select Connect option, the new connection is opened in a new tab. In this case, the new connection is opened in the current tab and the existing connection gets closed. The transfer queue speed shows the average speed. By selecting the Focus Display Momentary option will show the current transfer speed. These options change the way dates and times are shown across FileZilla. With the System Default option, FileZilla uses the format for the current configured language. This option sets the format as the ISO standard format. Or you can configure a custom format. For a list of options, visit the Date and Time Formatting wiki page. You find the link in the video description. The selected format is applied to both local and remote views. You can also configure how FileZilla shows the file size information. This option shows the file size in bytes. The thousands separator makes it easier to read large file sizes. You can use any of the 3 available options for size prefixes to make it easier to read large file sizes. With the prefix options, you can set the number of digits to be displayed. In this video, you learned how to change the user interface settings of FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to back up and restore FileZilla and FileZilla Pro settings. In this tutorial, you will learn how to back up and restore the settings with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. You may want to export FileZilla settings to backup. or to share them with other installations. To export settings, choose File, Export. Then you can select the settings to export. This option exports your sites as you see them in the Site Manager. This option exports the general configuration settings as seen in the Edit Settings menu option. This option exports all entries currently in your transfer queue. This option exports your filter configurations as you see them in the View Directory Listing Filters menu option. The settings are exported as a single XML file. To import settings, choose File, Import, and select the file to import. You can select which categories of settings have to be imported. FileZilla will merge those settings with your current setting if for some reason you need to back up the configuration files without using FileZilla. The configuration files are located in your Application Data folder under the FileZilla folder. Just copy the files in a different folder, install FileZilla, and put them back in that directory. FileZilla will automatically use them. This might be useful when restoring from a disk image. On macOS, the configuration files are located in your configuration directory under the FileZilla subdirectory. If you bought FileZilla Pro from the App Store version, the files are under Users Library directory. In this video, you learned how to back up and restore FileZilla and FileZilla Pro setting. In this video, we'll teach you how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. While we use S3, the instructions work also with all the other supported protocols. To learn how to configure connections with other protocols, watch the other tutorials you find in the video description. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. In the message view, FileZilla shows the events of the connection. To see more details, choose the Show Detailed Log option. The log can help you identify and correct problems in your connection. You can copy the contents of the message view to the clipboard. Please note that it is limited to a finite number of lines. However, for a large volume of events, you may want to save them to a file. Open FileZilla Settings. Choose Logging. With this option, FileZilla adds a timestamp to all events. Check this option to save the events to a file. Choose where the log file will be stored. You have to choose a directory where you have the permissions to save, otherwise a warning message is shown. You may want to limit the size of the file to prevent the file increase indefinitely. When the file reaches the size, a new log file is created and the old one is renamed. You can also increase the level of details shown in the message view and in the log file. Keep in mind that increasing the level also increases the amount of logged information and affects the performance. Increase the level only if requested. In this video, you learned how to enable logging with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, we'll teach you how to connect to a running Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this tutorial, you will learn how to connect to an Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. To connect to your Amazon EC2 instance, you need its IP address or DNS name and the key pair file created when the Amazon instance was initially set up. Launch FileZilla or FileZilla Pro. Click New in the Site Manager dialog box to create a new connection. Select SFTP-SSH File Transfer Protocol as the protocol. Enter the IP address or the host name of the EC2 instance. Select Key File as the logon type. Now enter the EC2 instance user. Use the Amazon instance key pair file to log in. If everything is correct now, you can connect to the EC2 instance. Click OK to accept the host. In the right side, you see your directories and files. In this video, you learned how to connect to an Amazon EC2 instance with FileZilla and FileZilla Pro. In this video, you learned how to use FileZilla. FileZilla Pro is fast and reliable. Plus, it supports a variety of other cloud protocols: Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Storage, Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Amazon EC2, Backblaze B2, and WebDAV. Are your website files ready to go? Time to get your copy of FileZilla Pro. Go to FileZillaPro.com and buy it with confidence. See you at the next video of the FileZilla Pro series.